Welcome to Understanding California Bicycle Laws and Injury Claims. I'm Ala Policastro, CLE Advisor for the Beverly Hills Bar Association, and today I'm delighted to introduce our speaker, Kiran Bisla. Kiran is a partner and co-founder of Sky Law Group. After graduating law school, Kiran began her legal career by representing large corporations in complex litigation. However, Kiran's passion and aptitude for masterfully dealing with cases involving a high level of emotion, need for trust, and relationship building steered Kiran to representing individual plaintiffs in torts-based and family law matters. Kiran's tort-based cases span everything from bicycle and pedestrian accidents, premises liability, to municipal claims, and even domestic violence-based cases. At the end of each day, Kiran is pleased to be able to do good work for good people and is truly humbled by the gratitude of her clients for the legal services she provides. We can't wait to hear what she has to share with us here today. Kiran?
Thank you, Ala. I appreciate your introduction. So, thank you for being here today, this afternoon. Today, we're going to take a comprehensive look at California's bicycle and e bike laws and how they're impacting personal injury litigation in real time. And before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know that I'm going to have a very detailed PowerPoint presentation today. So I will make that available to everyone after. So please don't rush to write notes. You can have my PowerPoint. So, bicycle laws and e bike laws is a rapidly evolving space, whether you're representing cyclists or defending municipalities. Understanding both the legal framework and the cultural shifts surrounding alternative transportation is essential. My goal today is to equip you with current statutory knowledge, practical case strategy tips, and tools to better analyze fault, immunity, and insurance coverage in many of these cases. Hopefully, today you'll walk away with a better grasp of new laws, trends, and practical strategies to better represent your clients. Okay, can we go to the next slide? So here's my agenda for today's presentation. I'm going to give you a roadmap for the next hour. We'll start with a quick overview of crash trends and why this topic is increasingly important for litigators. We'll then break down key California vehicle code provisions, especially those that govern cyclist behavior and street positioning. From there, we'll look at sidewalk riding rules, which is very, very annoying, which are highly dependent on local municipal codes that vary with streets at some times. E bike laws are changing quickly, so we'll cover recent updates, including the Omni Bike Bill and the 2025 regulatory changes. I'll also share recent case law, notably the California Supreme Court's decision in Tantavadi and its implications for governmental immunity. Finally, we'll wrap with insurance considerations, litigation tips, and some injury hotspots in Southern California. And this is going to be our roadmap. We'll begin with crash data, dig into California vehicle code, and laws governing both traditional and electric bicycles. And please move on. So let's talk about why this matters. So, California, due to its amazing climate and weather, leads the United States in 2022 with 149 cycling deaths. California has always been a leader in green transportation, but that comes with unintended consequences, especially when infrastructure and policy lag behind public behavior. Many of these deaths in California involve motor vehicles and could have been mitigated with clearer road rules and better driver awareness. And here are some stats. Los Angeles County averaged 36 bicycle fatalities per year in 2016, with the highest number of 42 fatalities reported in 2019. Changes in laws and protectors for bike riders caused the fatality number to drop to 38 in 2022. Orange County has had about 3,953 bicycle incidents and 73 fatalities between 2017 and 2021. In 2022, Orange County had 19 bicycle fatalities. Now, at the same time, we're seeing a huge spike in e bike usage, particularly among minors, which brings a different risk profile. These riders are faster, younger, and often less experienced than traditional cyclists. As lawyers, we must be able to interpret these trends and translate them into arguments about duty, foreseeability, and liability, whether we're making a claim or defending one. Cycling fatalities are climbing, and California leads the nation in cyclist deaths. Despite infrastructure improvement, the collision risks are rising, especially with e bikes. Next slide, please. And in regard to nationwide data changes, e bikes are now one of the larger types of bikes that are causing injuries and crashes. Um, They were previously counted under motor vehicles in regard to an e-bike crash versus a bike crash. And this small change explains some of the recent statistical spikes and can impact how insurers or municipalities interpret causation and responsibility. Next slide, please. So, crash trends by age and location. What's most concerning is minors make up over half of e bike injury victims. In 2013, the injuries rose to 70%. And where were these areas? Mainly coastal and affluent suburban areas. And knowing these patterns helps us understand foreseeability and even comparative fault arguments. Next slide, please. In the United States, purchases of e-bikes increased from 437,000 in 2020 to 1.1 million in 2022. And I believe even today the amount of e-bikes on the road definitely exceeds 1.1 million nationwide. And this increase in youth access to e-bikes has come with real risks. Head trauma has exploded 49-fold from 2017 to 2022, while unfortunately, helmet usage among minors has decreased by 6%, and that's according to JAMA. The statistical evidence points to an alarming 70% increase in e bike injuries from 2023, with more than half of all e bike accidents involving children under 18. This is consistent with broader national trends showing e bike injuries doubling annually from 2017 to 2022. In California, the highest number of e-bike injuries in 2024 was in beach areas before spreading inland. According to a medical director at the Children's Hospital of Orange County, the director reported injuries that were once coastal in nature have become problematic in areas that are now inland, such as Huntington Beach, Irvine, Santa Ana, Orange, and Newport Beach. By early 2025, the top 5 cities for e-bike injuries in Orange County were the ones I just mentioned. Next slide, please. And for e-bike injury hotspots in Los Angeles, you're going to really look to areas with high density in terms of people, such as downtown, as well as the beach cities, Venice, Santa Monica, and other beach cities. The highest risk neighborhoods in Los Angeles are what I previously stated. And you'll notice that most of these areas are tourist heavy or high density traffic zones. Understanding these patterns can help you develop foreseeability arguments or inform comparative fault analysis, especially when representing injured children or pedestrians. The risk in youth ridership and an increasing speed of e bikes has led to a significant concentration of accidents in high density urban neighborhoods and coastal cities. Attorneys should be aware that foreseeability arguments can often be bolstered by showing how certain locations pose a higher danger due to vehicle congestion, road design, or local bike enforcement practices. Sorry. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, e-bikes are new to a lot of us in regard to liability and classifying them, but being able to classify them is important when you start your analysis about an injury. So let's define our e-bike classes. California splits them into 3 classes, each with different legal treatment. Class 1 is an e-bike or a low-speed pedal-assisted electric bicycle that is equipped with a motor that provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling, and that assistance stops when the bicycle reaches 20 miles per hour. These e-bikes are legal on any paved surface that a regular bike is allowed to operate. Class 2 e-bikes or low-speed throttle-assisted electric bicycles are equipped with motors that can exclusively propel the bicycle, but that cannot provide assistance when the bicycle reaches 20 miles an hour. These e-bikes are legal on any paid surface that a regular bike is allowed to operate. And now, class 3 is an e bike or speed pedal assisted electric bicycle that is equipped with a motor that provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling and stops providing assistance when the bicycle reaches 28 miles per hour. Class 3s, for example, are often subject to stricter restrictions and safety gear mandates. Operators of Class 3 e bikes must be 16 years or older and wear a helmet. Class E bikes are prohibited from Class 1 multi use bike paths unless specifically authorized by a local ordinance. Knowing the class of e bike involved is crucial in evaluating both statutory compliance and liability. Next slide, please. In 2025, California refined what qualifies as an e bike. These rules are designed to prevent overlap with mopeds and motorcycles, which fall under stricter laws. If a bike exceeds these specifications, it could open the door to claims of illegal operation or improper classification. So, according to this, the max motor only speed is 20 miles per hour. The max motor is 750 watts, and all e bikes must have pedals. Next slide, please. Key California Vehicle Code provisions. Now, these are going to be some of the most important statutes that you're going to utilize in your analysis of liability and fault. These are the backbone laws. Section 21-200 sets the tone. Cyclists, even e bike cyclists, are treated like any other vehicle. Sections 21-202 and 21-208 guide how cyclists should position themselves. However, the 21-202 has changed, which I'll get to. The new version of Section 21760 from the Omni Bike Bill is critical. It now requires lane changes when passing bikes. Previously, Vehicle Code Section 21202 just stated that a rider has to stay to the right, and passing can be if there is 3 feet between the car and the rider. And the Omni Bike Bill changed that, so now a vehicle has to actually change lanes to get around a cyclist. Next slide, please. Okay, these are a lot of codes, but let's cover some of the basic safety and operational requirements. I've also listed the vehicle codes next to it so you can refer to it in the future. So, like I said, cyclists must ride in the direction of traffic. That's always important. Stay as far right as practical unless exceptions apply, which has now been changed, which I'll get to in a sec. Use bike lanes if slower than traffic unless turning or avoiding a hazard. A helmet is required under 18 for riders and passengers of bicycles and e-bikes. Bicycles have to always yield to pedestrians in crosswalks. A bike rider can't ride under the influence of alcohol or drugs. A bicycle cannot be an obstruction on a sidewalk. A bicycle rider must have at least one hand on handlebars at all time. A bicycle or e-bike rider cannot have headphones in both ears. I found this one interesting. A bicycle cannot hitch a ride or attach itself to a vehicle. And in regard to carrying items, a bicycle rider can't have information or packages in their hands that prevent them from having one hand on the handlebar at all times. Now, here are some other interesting ones that I found. Okay, well, we're going to move on here. Okay, so this is an important change in the restriction and or requirement for how vehicles interact with bicycles. So California Vehicle Code Section 2160 is also known as the 3 Feet for Safety Act, which was enacted in 2013 and required drivers to maintain a minimum distance of 3 feet when passing a bicycle traveling in the same direction on a highway. This was problematic for lots of reasons because it was very difficult for pedestrians and cyclists, as well as vehicles, to judge exactly how much space was between them and the cyclist. So that law was changed by the Omnibus Bike Act, called AB 1909, which was signed into law on September 16, 2022, and went into effect January 1st, 2024, which expands on this regulation and makes drivers required to change lanes entirely when passing a bicycle if another lane is available and the maneuver can be done safely. So, this is intended to provide a greater safety margin than the previous 3 foot rule, which could be challenging to accurately estimate and enforce. Okay, next slide. So more about the Omni Bike Bill because it does make some changes to other aspects of bike riding besides the 3 foot rule. So Class e-bike riders are allowed on bike paths unless there are prohibitions. And they are not allowed, however, on equestrian trails, recreational or multi-use trails, or hiking trails. Cyclists are now permitted to cross intersections in response pedestrian walk cycles. This allows a cyclist a head start so they can begin crossing before a vehicle traffic moves, which will help enhance their visibility and reduce potential collisions. So before, a cyclist had to wait until the crosswalk changed to walk, whereas now they're allowed a head start so that they are more visible to vehicles in the lane of travel. Next slide. Okay. This is a very frustrating aspect of bicycle riding. When you often have a case where a bicycle rider was injured, you have to analyze where they were in the city and sometimes even what street they were on because sidewalk riding is not governed by the vehicle code and it varies by city to city and sometimes even block to block. Unfortunately, Vehicle Code 21200 remains conspicuously silent on the specific matter of riding on a sidewalk. This was a deliberate legislative choice that reflects California's recognition of a diverse urban and suburban environment across the state, acknowledging that a single standard approach might not adequately address the varying needs of different communities. So, certain jurisdictions and cities have very different ways to treat sidewalk riding. This is important to know that liability and legality can change from block to block. Next slide. Okay, so I tried to provide a comprehensive list of some of the areas where bike riding is more frequent and prominent to give you a way to know what the ordinance would be. So, Los Angeles, bike riding is allowed unless it is reckless. So, you can ride on a bike, and this is the standard, so long as, quote, willful or wanton disregard for the safety of a person or property does not happen. The standard establishes a negligence based framework that permits responsible sidewalk riding while prohibiting reckless behavior. In Santa Monica, sidewalk riding is prohibited. Same with Manhattan Beach and Inglewood. Marina del Rey, it's prohibited in unincorporated sections of Los Angeles. In West Hollywood, it's only allowed if there are no bike lanes. In Pasadena, we are permitted if you can yield to pedestrians, and you must yield to pedestrians anyway. In Long Beach, sidewalk riding is sign-based. In Glendale, it's prohibited in business districts. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the restrictions for sidewalk riding in Orange County. In Irvine, it is permitted unless a sign is posted indicating otherwise. In Newport Beach, it's prohibited completely. Huntington Beach is a little different. It's prohibited near business districts, schools, parks, and even churches. So definitely look at that section if you have a bicycle case in Huntington Beach. In Tustin, it's permitted, but one must yield to pedestrians. In Fullerton, there are no specific ordinances, so it's permitted by default. And Westminster, prohibited near business districts. Next slide, please. San Diego is very different in their take on when you can ride a bicycle or e-bike on a sidewalk. So San Diego, Oceanside, Encinitas, National City, Chula Vista, Imperial Beach, Lemon Grove, Santee, and the unincorporated San Diego area is all allowed except in business districts. In Carlsbad, it's prohibited, El Cajon prohibited, Vista prohibited, Escondido, regulated but not prohibited. San Marcos, regulated but not prohibited. Solano Beach, not regulated. And La Mesa, not regulated. So you can see, based on all these different counties' ordinances and regulations, how difficult it can be to evaluate a bicycle or e bike case, depending on where the potential client is. Next slide. Okay. So oftentimes, since we have e-bikes now with people riding them all over the cities as well as bicycles, I thought it might be interesting to see how they compare in regard to the law because they're generally considered the same, but there are a couple of differences. So all of them are covered under Vehicle Code 21200. And bicycles are not classified. They're treated as one category, whereas e-bikes, as we previously discussed, have three categories under Vehicle Code Section 312.5. Bicycles can use most bike paths unless there's a local restriction. And as we spoke earlier, Class 3 e-bikes are prohibited from Class 1 bike paths. For bicycles, helmets are required only for passengers and riders under 18. Whereas for an e-bike, a helmet is required for all Class 3 riders. Sidewalk riding is governed by local ordinance that we already discussed, and Class 3 bikes are often banned from sidewalks. Bicycles no longer need to be registered, or one doesn't have to have a license to ride them. And for e-bikes, there's no registration or license requirement, but you must meet power and speed limits. Now, this is important too for insurance. For bicycles, insurance is not required, but may be covered under homeowners or renters policies if you get into an accident or have a client who injured someone while riding a bicycle. However, with e-bikes, insurance is not required. However, it's often excluded from traditional policies. So you might want to check your homeowner's policy to see if motor vehicles are allowed. And generally, e-bikes are not allowed under motor vehicle policies either. Next slide, please. So, when you're evaluating a bicycle case, remember that local codes are the key to evaluating both plaintiff and defendant's conduct. Was the rider violating a municipal rule? Were there warning signs? Even if it's not negligence per se, these facts may tip comparative fault or duty analysis. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk a little litigation strategy. Many plaintiff's attorneys often overlook statutory exceptions. However, these are gold when your client is accused of not riding, let's say, as far right as practical, or on the sidewalk or not on the sidewalk. Local ordinances also give you a way to frame your client's conduct as reasonable. And don't forget technical compliance. Was the e bike modified? Was it even legal to ride it on the road? Next slide. Okay. So we're going to be speaking about one of the newer cases called Tanzavati versus Rancho Palos Verdes. The site for this case is 14 Cal App 5th, 639 in the year 2023. Now, this was a precedent-setting case involving a cyclist who died in a collision with a tractor trailer. And while the evidence in the case suggested that the cyclist might have been at fault by proceeding straight through an intersection from a right turn lane, the court focused on the city's potential liability for the road design. Specifically, the court ruled that while the city maintained immunity for the design itself, it could be held liable for failure to warn of the dangerous condition created by discontinuing a bike lane for a half-mile stretch to accommodate parking for a park. So this is a unique case. And this case, the Supreme Court of California drew a crucial distinction. The city had design immunity for eliminating a bike lane, but they could still be liable for failing to warn cyclists of the hazard that the design created. This opens up new arguments in cases involving municipal roadways. So even if a design immunity applies, failure to warn may still create liability. And that's the appropriate section, which is Government Code 835, an exception for a dangerous condition. Excuse me. Next slide, please. So when liability is contested, lean on the exceptions built into the law. Ride right and bike lane rules have flexible carve outs, which we have discussed. In public entity cases, argue failure to warn if design immunity shuts the door. And when seeking damages, don't shy away from statistical context, especially with injured minors. Next slide, please. One area of the law that's evolving, as we don't really have a whole lot of legislation or case law on this, is for insurance. What covers what when you're riding an e-bike? Um, California right now does not require e-bike riders to carry insurance. However, if a child is riding an e-bike and someone who has homeowners or renters insurance, that might cover liability if that child injures someone while riding an e-bike, but it depends on the policy language. Many policies for motor vehicles and homeowners exclude motorized vehicles, especially if they exceed certain speeds or wattage thresholds. Auto insurance almost always excludes e-bikes. That's because e-bikes aren't classified as motor vehicles under most policies. To address this, the insurance industry now offers dedicated e bike policies. These can cover theft, injury, liability, and property damage. When representing a rider or someone injured by one, it's crucial to examine all applicable coverage, personal, household, or specialized. And if you are in doubt if is insurance under your homeowners, always check the policy language. The policy, as we know, is going to govern what controls and what doesn't control for coverage. Okay, next slide, please. E-bike insurance in practice. So, practically speaking, liability coverage for an e-bike related injury often turns on small details in policy definitions. If the bike exceeds 20 miles an hour under a motor power alone or has more than 750 watts of power, it may fall into a gray area or be excluded. But even when coverage applies, insurers may dispute it based on how the e bike was used, for instance, racing, business use, or restricted terrain. These nuances are especially important when your client is either the injured party or a minor who caused harm. Each policy is critical in every case. And if you have clients or family members who, like my children, want e bikes, definitely obtain an e bike insurance policy. It's going to protect you, it's going to protect your children, and it might even prevent your assets from being looked at if there is, in fact, a lawsuit. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So here we're summarizing some of the important statutes that will govern what is going to define liability in your case. And knowing these statutes and their built in exceptions will help you frame the conduct of cyclists accurately and persuasively. Next slide, please. Okay. Litigation wise, if you have a situation where there might be some city liability, always claim failure to warn under Government Code 835. And also emphasize foreseeability, especially for minors in areas that are urban or near the beach or have a high density of cars and pedestrians, like we often see in downtown. Next slide. As we have discussed, there are many evolving laws in this area of bike riding and e-bike riding. And just remember, ordinances may vary block to block. So it's crucial to look at what part of the city, even what part of the street your potential client had obtained an injury while riding a bike or an e-bike. And really advocate for your clients in regard to their statutory rights and their rights as bicycle riders. Next slide. Unfortunately, I don't have anything further, and I would definitely entertain any type of questions that you can provide to me on the Q&A. I know some of you might not be live, but I did get one question about sidewalk riding in Culver City. I do not have that particular area, but I can look it up and get it to you. So I will definitely find the local ordinance if they have one and get it to you. Um, Another question is no headphones in both ears. Does that include earbuds? So, what I would consider is if you're using Bluetooth, I would have one ear that has one earbud in and one ear that doesn't. I have another question here. I'm in pre-lit now. My client was riding a Teleria X3. Adjusters claiming my client is 213 because of the type of the bike. Have you come across this? The tires were not off-road tires, but my client sold the bike without telling me. So I would attack this in a few ways. I'm not really sure what class bike the X3 is, although it seems like it's a class 3 bike. And then I would also see if the bike has been modified in regard to changing tires, like you said, or if it's for racing. And I would also see if the client has homeowners or renters or any type of policy that could cover this, because that might be difficult to say that you have insurance when it might be a type of bike that falls outside of any of the rules we have or any of the requirements we have for insurance. It sounds like it's a class 3 bike. Uh, Another question is, what about stop signs? Do bikes need to abide all stop signs? Yes, absolutely. All bike riders have to abide by stop signs. They're considered, they have to, like vehicles, they have to follow the rules of the road. So there are no exceptions to bike riders when it comes to stop signs. And I have also seen many bike riders just go through a stop sign, and that is actually not going to help them if they are in a accident because they need to stop. Um, this question is, I want to be sure I understand that no one 18 or over is required to wear a helmet. So for an e-bike, the rule is, I believe that you have to wear a helmet if it's a class 3, but only if you're under 18. So the 18 or younger requirement is basically for minors. And for bicycle riders, you have to wear a helmet if you're under 18. If you're a bike rider or a passenger for an e-bike, I believe you have to have a helmet if you're under 18 for an e-bike as well. Thoughts on Los Angeles Municipal County Cyclist Anti-Harassment Ordinance? I'm not too familiar what that is, unfortunately. So if you could follow up and give me some information as to that, I would love to answer that question. Another question is, are e-scooters lawful on sidewalks in the city of LA? Um, I don't know that because I wasn't really focusing on e-scooters because they fall under a different category of mopeds. So I'm not sure, but I would love to do a seminar on other motor vehicles besides bicycles. So I would have to get back to you on that, but I'm not 100% sure about scooters. Okay. So another question. How do juries view cyclists generally? How do juries view cyclists generally view bicyclists compare hostility toward many motorized motorcyclists? How about minor cyclists? Um, I believe, unfortunately, that in certain areas and jurisdictions, there is an idea that a lot of bike riders do not follow the rules of the road and they run through stop signs and they don't do what they're told. So they might have some discriminatory treatment, just like motorcyclists. I don't think it's as bad as motorcyclists, but I think there is some there, and that's something you would have to overcome. I know a lot of people are getting very upset by seeing children zooming around their neighborhoods on e-bikes. So that could be another way of harassment and or discrimination because these are really dangerous, and a lot of children don't wear helmets and they're going pretty fast at 28 miles an hour. Okay, this question is how can I ride on the left sidewalk even though it's opposite of traffic? Um, in order to determine whether you can ride on the sidewalk, it depends on what part of the city or what actual city you're in. So I would look at that first. And no, I don't believe you can ride at any time opposite of traffic. You must travel with the flow of traffic. Is it legal for e-bike riders to do wheelies on public streets? I don't believe it is legal. Cars aren't allowed to do wheelies and they're considered vehicles, so no, they cannot. Um, the vehicle code does prohibit bikes on sidewalks. It's one of the double digit statutes. So, yes. How common is it to pursue negligent entrustment claims against a minor's parent who may have gifted an e bike to their kid? I would definitely consider that cause of action if, in fact, you have a minor who injured a person or another cyclist using an e bike, and the parent either was not supervising, was not instructing, didn't provide a helmet, and maybe didn't even obtain insurance. So I would definitely pursue that as a cause of action, and I think we're gonna see that more until California comes up with legislation requiring insurance for e-bikes. So I would definitely pursue that cause of action for that fact pattern. Can e-bikes drive on Santa Monica Beach bike path continuing north onto Los Angeles near Entrada and West Channel Road going north to Will Rogers State Beach, which is Los Angeles? Um, Los Angeles and Santa Monica, what I have learned about e-bike riding on bike beach paths, I believe they're allowed to drive on the beach bike path unless there is some notification saying that they can't. You're gonna have to check the local ordinance for that just to be safe because I don't wanna potentially give you wrong information because I don't know every single, um, exception to the rule, and there are very unique exceptions down near the beach on certain areas within Los Angeles, including the beach cities. So please check that. If you can't find it, I reach out to me and I will look into it and hopefully get you an answer. Also, if the bike rider is in a bike lane and gets hit and is an adult and not wearing a helmet, the driver would not be able to claim liability on the part of the bicyclist for not wearing a helmet if there was no head trauma. Um, I would assume you would always claim comparative fault that a bicyclist is safer wearing a helmet than not. But as plaintiffs' attorneys and defense attorneys, we're going to plead whatever we think is viable. And I think that is a valid reason to say that a person not wearing a helmet is not inviting a traumatic brain injury, but they're not protecting themselves from that kind of injury if in fact it happens, because it is foreseeable that they might get hit by a car for whatever reason. So you could definitely argue comparative fault there. Um, is it legal for e-bike riders to do wheelies on public streets? If it is illegal, what is the penalty? I believe it is illegal, as cars cannot do that, nor can bikes. I don't know the exact code that would punish someone for doing that, but I can look it up and find it for you. I believe it has to be part of the vehicle code that is going to dictate and determine what is appropriate bike and e-bike usage. So I do not think that a e-bike can do a wheelie on a public street. You could probably be cited by a police officer and maybe get a ticket for that. And I think that's what police officers do if there are any problems or if a bike rider, e-bike rider is not comporting with the rules of the road and regulations. How do you overcome the hostility so many people, including insurance adjusters, have towards cyclists? Well, that's a good loaded question. So I'm not sure if you're talking pre-litigation or litigation, but in litigation and at a jury trial, obviously there's going to be questions you want to ask potential jurors about their biases towards bicycle riders. But I would think in California, since we are a greener state, we're trying to promote cleaner air and less pollution, less traffic, that might be an avenue you could argue. And in a jury, obviously, you're going to try and get rid of, as well as you can for cause, all of the people who are very against bike riding. And you really need to lean into the rules of the road for cyclists and to show that your cyclist was doing things correctly and according to the law. And it was the negligence of the car or the vehicle that caused the injuries, and focus on the good jurors you might have and focus on the good aspects of your case to overcome, hopefully, some of the bad facts. Okay. What are duties of state parks and Santa Monica Conservancy to maintain mountain trails, or does this rider assume risk of ruts or rock slides? That's another question that probably falls outside of the specifics of this talk, but I know there's some trail immunity claims that one can make, so that the government would make or the city would make. So I'm not really sure about um, rock ruts and rock slides on mountain trails because of trail immunity. So I think you would have to look into the specific jurisdiction and area where the rider is riding, and then obviously look at how bad the trail is and some of the areas that are causing problems. What are the exceptions for riding on the right under vehicle code 21202? I believe one is supposed to ride to the right as close as possible, so long that it is safe. So safety is going to be the most important consideration. If it's not safe to ride that far on the right because of, let's say, construction or parked cars, and you're going to move over a little. But I think those are the exceptions. You just want to make sure safety is the overall consideration. I have a client who was pulling out onto a street and a cyclist was on the sidewalk from the direction facing traffic. The car struck the cyclist because he was turning right. Does the cyclist have any liability for riding against instead of with traffic? So, yes, the cyclist should be riding with traffic at all times. And you have to also be careful about whether or not the cyclist is even allowed to ride on the sidewalk, given the particular city, area, or street where this took place. However, you can also argue foreseeability, comparative fault, if this is a jurisdiction where bike riders are frequently on the sidewalk or frequently around the area because it's close to the beach or it's downtown, you might be able to make a comparative argument, and that's what I would do. And excuse me, you can also say that the car should have seen the bike rider. So I would attack it that way, but you do have some issues that are against you, which is riding against traffic and possibly the sidewalk. So I would look into that area more carefully. Is there UM, insurance coverage at play? Um, Not for e-bikes or bicycles unless you have a particular e-bike policy. So you would have to obtain a policy specifically for an e-bike, but generally any accidents are not going to be covered under an auto policy that would have or UIM coverage. Maybe for a bike, there might be homeowners coverage that's available, but I don't think excuse me, I know e-bikes are not covered under homeowners policy. So maybe there are UIM coverage for an e-bike policy, but I would look into that and see if it is available to you. Does anyone have any other questions? Hopefully I answered them appropriately.
Okay, so it looks like we have a few questions that came over through our help desk, if that's all
Okay,
right. Okay,
sure.
so the first one is, let's see. Given the 49-fold increase in e-bike related head trauma among youth, how might this data influence your litigation strategy when representing a minor involved in an e-bike collision?
So we know that it's foreseeable that this is going to happen. And if I'm representing an injured child who didn't wear a helmet, I would really focus on the other party's negligence into what caused it, foreseeability. Um, I would try and make my client look to be the innocent party, even though they might have some liability and fault because they might have been riding without a helmet. I wasn't really sure which side I would be arguing in a situation like this. So if I was defense, I would really nail them with, well, the parent should have bought a policy. The parent should have the child wear a helmet, and this child should have been supervised. This child should not have been riding in the area without an adult. So it really depends how I would attack it in regard to what side I'm on. But as a plaintiff's attorney, I would definitely say that we know that there is a lot of children on the road riding these e-bikes without helmets, and that vehicles now have to be aware because even if it's someone's fault, you don't want to see a child dead because they just forgot to wear a helmet that day. So I would really lean into the foreseeability aspect of expecting more children, more e-bike riders on the road. And hopefully California's laws are going to catch up with what's happening with the rise in e-bikes, not only in California, but around the country.
Great. And then I have another. How would you present evidence of municipal code variability in a case involving sidewalk riding where a rider might cross from one legal zone to a prohibited one mid-block?
So I would talk about whether or not, obviously you can't talk design immunity, but whether or not they failed to warn about certain risks. And you would really have to lay into the facts of that particular situation as to where the problems arose with the bike rider, depending on where they were. Is there a failure to warn because the bike lane ended? Is there failure to warn because the roads narrowed and there was no adequate notice? I would really look in to see how notice requirements are affecting how bike riders perceive what's happening, and obviously maybe look into an expert. A bike riding expert would give you an idea, or even a municipality city expert will give you an idea as to whether or not the city has some liability for not warning of hazards or failing to warn.
Okay. And then with e-bikes often excluded from homeowners and auto policies, what steps should attorneys take early in case to determine if a client or adverse party has any applicable coverage?
So I would definitely ask if they have a specific e-bike policy, and then ask just to see, and it's possible maybe their homeowners covers it, even though we know that most of them won't. I would look to see what possible coverage they have under any potential insurance policy, renters, homeowners. We know auto doesn't cover it. We know homeowners doesn't cover it, but maybe the policy wasn't written with specific exclusions. So I would look to that. But if they don't have an e-bike policy, it might be very difficult.
Right, great. And then let's see. When asserting a government code 835 claim, what types of evidence are most persuasive to show that a city knew or should have known about the danger, especially with regard to e-bike accidents?
So I would look and see, and you're going to have to do a lot of investigation as to where factually where this took place. And you might almost have to have an expert go out there or a bike rider themselves and tell you how soon it would take to notice this defect. Um, Pictures, you might want to do discovery on any changes the city has made in that particular area in the past and whether or not they did notify people, or if there are signs, if the signs have been modified, moved, removed, destroyed. So it's very fact intensive, but you also really want to get a good understanding of the location where the incident happened, and utilize the facts, pictures, an expert, and maybe the knowledge of your client if he or she rides in that area regularly and notice some changes. We got a
Okay.
question here. How do you handle investing in a case you ride an e-bike to simulate the incident? I think that's a really good idea. I don't know if I would go, I don't have one. I don't know if I would go purchase an e-bike, but maybe I would have someone simulate the exact speed, conditions, etc., to know what they were seeing and perceiving and whether or not their perceptions were reasonable according to the situation, the weather, the lighting, the road conditions, etc. So you could probably find an expert to do that, or you could do some testing, but I think that's important. One thing I always do when I have cases like this or other cases as well, I go to the scene of the crash and I try and look and see what was happening around that specific time, if I can replicate, if I can be there when the weather conditions are similar, just so I get an understanding. Because if I, as the attorney, have an understanding of what's going on, I think I can then relate it better to an expert who might help me and also get a better understanding of what the client went through. So I would definitely go to the scene and maybe rent an e-bike to see what the client was experiencing, maybe videotape it too, just for my own reference and also to show an expert later. So I think that's a very good thing to do in prepping for a case.
Alrighty. With considering all of the questions that we've had today, do you have any final thoughts or key takeaways for our attendees today?
Yeah, I want to thank you all for your time and for all the questions. And I understand I rushed through a lot of information, but if you are practicing in this area of law or you have clients who are coming to you, I would always check to make sure that there aren't any new cases regarding cyclists and e-bikes and government immunity and failure to warn, because this is a very new area of law. There are a lot of e-bikes, as we know, that are on the road, and laws have not caught up to the fact that these vehicles are on the road, and one has to become very well versed in the vehicle codes, the exceptions, the sidewalk rules. And even if you think that your client may not have a case, you could be surprised due to the conditions, the factual conditions, what was happening with, let's say, a driver that hit your client, or even a minor. Because at the end of the day, we are human. And when you have to try your case in front of a jury, you're going to have to take the good facts with the bad. So considering there is a stigma against bike riders, these are going to be difficult cases, but there are a lot of things and or facts, case law, and vehicle codes that can help you, even if one of your clients might have been what you think is the wrong or party who caused the crash. I would definitely consider working those cases up and seeing what you can do to try and advocate for them, because we all need a cleaner environment, and e-bike riders and bicycle riders are helping that. So definitely check the statutes, definitely check the local ordinances, and definitely check for case law, because certain things are going to be coming down as more people get into these crashes and collisions. And thank you for your time.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. This concludes today's presentation. We would like to once again thank our speaker, Kiran Bisla, for such an excellent program. And of course, a big thank you to our audience and members for learning with us today. Have a great day, everybody.